Hi, I'm Richard Maraj, Senior Minister at Unity of Phoenix Spiritual Center, and I want to thank you for visiting our website and for tuning in to today's message. If you feel inspired by today's talk, I really encourage you to make a donation by hitting that button below and making a contribution to this ministry. It'll allow us to continue these messages online and to do the great work we do here at Unity of Phoenix, which is to inspire people to live better lives. So thanks for tuning in, thanks for your support, and we hope to see you at a Sunday real soon.
Morning again, everyone. And a shout out to everybody who tunes in and watches us online. So there's a guy. So this robber breaks into a house at night while the residents were away and starts searching through all the drawers and cupboards for valuables. As he's into this for about 3 or 4 minutes, he hears a voice that says, "Jesus is watching you." And he freezes, absolutely freaked out by it. And then he doesn't seem to see anything, so he thinks maybe it was just in his imagination. So he continues robbing and going through stuff and collecting stuff. And then he hears the voice again, "Jesus is watching you." And he's really getting concerned. Whether this is the voice of God, did the people come home? And then nothing after a few minutes. And the only thing he sees is like this parrot that's in a cage. And so he kind of ignores the parrot, and then he moves around again, and third time, "Jesus is watching you." And then he turns and he thinks it's the parrot, and he says, "Hey, is that your voice? Are you speaking to me?" And the parrot said, "Yes." And the guy's relieved, so relieved. He's like, "Phew." And he says, "Hey, so what's your name?" And the parrot says, "It's Ishmael." And the guy scoffs and says, "Ishmael? Ishmael? What kind of stupid name for a parrot is Ishmael? What idiot would name a parrot Ishmael?" And the parrot says, "The same idiot that named that pit bull behind you, Jesus." So, all right. All right. So today, we wrap up our series on the power of no. And the reason I'm teaching on this topic is because many of us have a hard time saying no. And such a hard time we have to the point that we end up saying yes to things we don't like, to things we don't want, to things that aren't good for us. We say yes to unhealthy relationships, sometimes ones that are even toxic and abusive. We say yes to people who sometimes drain and deplete our energy and take up a lot of our time. We say yes to activities that we don't even have time for because our calendars are already full, and we still say yes. So the question is, why? Why is it that we say yes to things that are bad for us, to things that hurt us, that things don't work? And it's because we want to be nice. We want to do the right thing. We want to be loving good people, and loving good people tend to say yes. And we also just don't want to let anybody down. We don't want to disappoint people, so we say yes even when we don't want to. It's because many of us are people pleasers, and we don't want anyone to think negatively of us or dislike us. How many people ever regretted saying yes to something, and then you get angry at yourself for saying yes, and yet you keep saying yes? I mean, we have such a hard time saying no that because we think it's negative. We think there's something wrong with it. But you know, the truth is, saying no is actually very positive, and it is very powerful. And I say it's a vital and important aspect of our spiritual maturity and our spiritual growth. It is a vital aspect, of our emotional growth and unfoldment and development. And I think it's a key to having a happy and prosperous life and a happy and prosperous relationship as well. Finding our no gives several blessings and benefits. The first one, it sets boundaries as to what's appropriate and not appropriate. The second thing that it does, it creates a level of clarity of what we want and what we don't want, and knowing ourselves. And it actually honors ourselves when we find our no to be true to who we really are, and not be guided by other people's opinions and other people's desires over ours. Saying no liberates us from a lot of negative energy. And when we say no to things, it actually gives us more energy to focus on the things that we really want to do and are really meant to do. Closing those doors really opens some paths for a greater level of creative expression. In the book of Matthew chapter 5, verse 37, it says, "Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything else is from evil." And what it's saying is you really need to be clear about what you want and what you don't want. What it is you'll say yes to and what it is you really need to say no to. And after having a habitual pattern of saying yes to things that aren't good for us, it takes a lot of courage to learn to say no. It takes a lot of deep insight and getting in touch with ourselves to really find our authentic no. But we have that power and that ability. In 2 Timothy, it says, "God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but a spirit of power, love, and self-discipline." So how do we use that power, to say no to things that don't work for us? So in this final lesson, I want to address saying no to three things that I think hold us back from truly living as fulfilling a life as we could live. And the first one is to say no to scarcity. Many of us live with a mindset that there just isn't enough, and there will never be enough. Never enough time. There'll be never enough money, or not enough food, or not enough love, or answers, or solutions, or happiness, or success, or opportunities. Scarcity is a mindset that is so ingrained in lack and limitation, it affects every area of our lives. It affects how we behave, how we think, our levels of expectation. And what happens is in scarcity, we end up always living in a state of fear and anxiety and anxiousness and being worried about things. It's believing there's only one piece of pie, and if somebody gets a big piece, that means I'm going to get less, or maybe even nothing. Scarcity shows up in a variety of different ways, including saying things like, "I'm always broke," or "I'll probably end up losing what I have." Things never work out for me. Life is so unfair. I always get taken advantage of. The mindset of scarcity has a belief that it will be hard for me to get anything I want in life, and probably it's unlikely that I will attract and achieve the things that I desire. We end up feeling powerless and hopeless with a mindset that is scarce. And the fact is, we think scarcity is the truth about life, but the truth it's not the truth. We have just learned and been conditioned to think in terms of lack and limitation and scarcity. The truth is that we live in abundance. Abundance is the truth, that even in the face of lack, that we still live in abundance. There's still abundance. And so in the book of Matthew, chapter 14, everybody's very familiar with the parable of the loaves and fishes. So there are 5,000 people. Jesus is about to speak to 5,000 people, and there isn't enough food. The people are hungry. In fact, there are only 5 loaves and 2 fish for 5,000 people. And so there's a situation of not enoughness. There's a situation of lack. But how does Jesus react? There are 2 ways. Here's the way Jesus actually reacted. First thing he told the people was to sit down on the green grass, which symbolizes, let's just stay calm and relax in that moment. Second thing he did was he looked up. He looked away from the lack and looked at the source, knowing that there was a solution, that there was abundance still available, even though it wasn't here, present in the moment. Third thing he did was he gave thanks for the bread they already have. Sometimes we could take for granted and not even see what we have, but he said, give thanks for what you have. Give thanks. And then he broke it and used it and passed it around, opening a space for abundance and enjoyment of what we had. And at the end, there was 12 baskets left over. There was more left over than they started with. What a powerful way to handle a situation of lack. Here's a second way. Imagine if Jesus freaked out and went into fear and negativity. What? 5 loaves for 5,000 people? This is horrible. This is a mess. Which one of you disciples was responsible for the bread? I told you we needed bread. Bartholomew, weren't you supposed to get the bread? You all never listened to me. This is terrible. They're hungry. I have a fantastic sermon. They're not going to hear it because they're so hungry. See, it's a good thing I wasn't Jesus, because this wouldn't have gone well. And so the point I'm trying to make is, in any situation where there appears to be lack, do you approach it from a scarcity mentality or an abundance mentality like Jesus did. And the truth of the matter is that there is a spirit, there is an energy in the universe that's always providing for us. It has provided for us our entire life, but sometimes we don't trust it. We go right to lack and not enough, this will never work, instead of just centering and giving thanks, centering and opening a space, knowing that a solution, that knowing that good will come forth. A scarceness mentality impacts our life more negatively than we realize. The two most important ways it impacts us is when we have a scarcity mentality, we can't see and notice the good that's already there. The mind so sees what isn't there, we can't even enjoy and acknowledge what is there. And the second thing the scarcity mentality does, it repels the good that we desire. If we all agree in the law of attraction, if we keep holding thoughts of lack and limitation and not enough, what do we get more of? Lack and limitation and not enough. A scarcity mentality robs us of seeing the good and enjoying what we have now, and it repels the very good that we seek and say that we want. So my question, is there a situation in your life of lack, of not enoughness? And how do you handle it? Are you willing to raise your consciousness to a consciousness of abundance? Or are you willing to, or do you stay in the fear and the anxiety of lack and the mentality of not enoughness? The fact is, every one of us needs to practice these things. And one of the ways to do that is to remember and recall all the things that are good about your life, of how wonderful your family is and people who love and support you. Think about how many people you love and care and support. Think of how wonderful the weather is, or how delicious food is, or how wonderful your home is, or your car, or the work that you do, or laughter or music. There's so many things. One of the things I love about my kitchen, it's so wide open, there's nothing there but glass, and I get to see all the palm trees and the beautiful stuff that's outside. It's one of the things that just really lights me up. There's so many things in our lives that we take for granted, and it's not scarce. There's an abundance if we look at all those things. And the fact is, sometimes we'll have a loaves and fish situation. I call it a lack attack, when things don't go as well, and we have to judge in all those situations. Do we go to fear and scarcity, or do we go to faith and abundance and gratitude and opening a space and knowing that things are working together for our good? There will be a solution. And so the first thing we need to do to say no to is to say no to scarcity. The second one is we need to say no to noise. We live in a noisy, loud world, don't we? Garbage trucks and planes and helicopters and TVs blasting music all the time, people talking. It's loud, loud, loud. But you know what's even louder, what noise is even worse, is a noise that happens inside our head. All that mental chatter, all that negative self-talk, all the judgments and criticism, all the stories that we make up in our heads. I mean, all of the grievances of who did us wrong and blaming. We run all this. Our minds are filled with these unhealthy, negative thoughts and ideas, and that blocks us from having peace and joy and happiness and even being present to life. So one of the things we need to do is when we find ourselves, engaged in negative thinking and in blame and all these different types of things, criticizing, we just need to say no or just say stop. Some people say cancel. We need to be responsible for what goes in our mental house and to guard it a little bit better. A crowded mind with negative thoughts is never going to bring peace and happiness into our lives. We literally fill our minds with negativity and expect positive and prosperous things to happen. The book of Philippians says what we should think. It said, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is praiseworthy or excellent or good, these are the things to think about. These are the things to fill your mind with. Nowhere in the Bible does it say, whatever is negative, whatever is awful, whatever is pessimistic, whatever is fearful, whatever is horrible, whatever is bitter and resentful, these are the things to think about. I looked through the entire Bible, I really did. I couldn't find it. And yet, based on behavior, which of the two do you think we follow more? Every one of us needs to be more responsible for the things that go through our head, to reflect more of the kind of life we want. Here's what the Dalai Lama says we should fill our minds with. He says, every day, think as you wake up, how fortunate I am to be alive. I have a precious human life, and I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to use all my energies to develop myself, to expand my heart to others, to achieve enlightenment for the betterment of all beings. I am going to have kind thoughts towards others. I am not going to get angry or think badly of others. I'm going to benefit others as much as I can. It's important to say no to the mental noise and to open a space for more positive, more affirming, more loving types of thoughts and intentions. The second way for us to say no to noise is to say yes to silence. Jesus said, when you pray, go to that inner chamber and close the door and pray to your Father in secret. In the Psalms it says, be still and know that I am God. Because it is in the silence and the stillness of communing with God that we open ourselves to peace and love and greater wisdom. And all the things that are not of God, not for our good, all that noise, you know what? It just dissolves away naturally. Because the more we're centered in spirit, the more we're centered in silence, the more we become at one with it, and everything that's not like it just falls away. Do you know just stopping doing negative things raises the vibrational energy in our lives, in our relationships? Just stopping complaining in a relationship, I think I've mentioned this, will improve the relationship. You don't have to do anything else. Just stop negative chatter or reduce it, and it'll increase the vibration in our lives. You all heard that expression. It says, it's the journey, not the destination. Is that what it says? Something like that? It's the journey, not the destination? Yeah, that's not true. It's not about the journey. You know what it's about? It's about now. Because one of the things that noise does, it pulls us away from now. With so much worry and anxiety and fear, we miss now. We miss the present. And nothing is more powerful than now. You know, when Moses was told by God to go tell Pharaoh to let his people go, Moses said, who should I say sent me? And God said, tell them I am that I am sent you. And that statement, I am that I am, representing God, is a very, very powerful thing for us to learn and remember. The first thing is that the I am is that aspect of God in us. And we need to be careful what we attach our I am to. To say that I am broke, or I am unlovable, or I am clumsy, or I'm an idiot, or all these things are just not the way to honor the divine in us and the divine as us. And the second thing about I am that I am is that it is powerfully in the present. Notice it doesn't say, tell him I was that I was. Tell him that I is, or I will be that I will be. No, I am that I am. And what it reminds us is God is only in the present. That life is only in the present. The joy is only in the present. That the power you have to choose is only in the present. And when we let noise pull us away from the present, we let noise pull us away from God. And joy and love and being present to ourselves, being present in our relationships. So saying no to the mental noise will increase our life, but when we go a little deeper and realize it brings us to the now, it brings us to the most powerful and peaceful, incredible place we can experience. But we need to enter that silence to enjoy it and to experience it. And the last thing is we need to say no to ourselves. How many people really like life when everything goes our way? Anybody? How many people enjoy being in control and think you're pretty good at it? How many people have at least one person in your life that you know if they listened to you and behaved exactly the way you think they should, that life would be better for everyone? Anyone? And the final no is to say no to the part of us that feels like we need to be in control. To the part of us that can be rigid and flexible. The part of us that can be very attached to think that life should only be this way. That I can never be happy until this happens. That I won't be successful unless I achieve this or earn that. You know, that life can only be good if this happens, and that really restricts happiness. It restricts and limits. You know, and there's nothing wrong with being orderly and everything having its right place. But it's when that mentality grows to all areas of life is when it becomes a problem. And we become our own problem. That we need to say no to ourselves and to the areas where we're reluctant or resistant or unwilling or rigid and inflexible. Where we literally believe my will be done is the best way. And are very rigid and upset and frustrated when life doesn't go the exact way we think it should. That so limits our level of abundance and joy and the nuances and subtleties and the tapestry of life. It is more complicated than just this happening that way. And so what happens in saying no to ourselves means that we need to surrender. We need to let go at the deepest level of our will and trying to force this or make this happen. Surrender has a bit of a bad rap. We see it as kind of giving up. We see it as settling, but it's not about giving up, but it's giving way to something greater, something wiser. I remember when I was a kid and I first heard this, surrender your will and your life to God, I was like, oh my God, that sounds scary. Suppose God wants me to do something I don't want to do. I got a good plan. Maybe we should stick with this one. How many people's life has ever gone a little differently than you thought? Anybody ever have that happen? You know, so when I was young, I had a whole plan for my life. I was the captain of my high school basketball team, high jump champion. Our volleyball team finished second in the province. My life was about athletics. And my brother was a track coach. I got his PhD in motor development and a kinesiology professor. And I liked athletics like my brother, and that was my plan for my life, to play volleyball and basketball at the college level and, you know, go into either physical therapy or phys ed or whatever it was. That was my plan for my life. And then things changed. You know, I wasn't able suddenly to be able to do anything like that again. And I felt lost and depressed that I couldn't do anything. And then finally, my brother introduced me to Toastmasters, and I found myself speaking, and I really enjoyed that in prisons and stuff. It was really kind of cool. And then I went to church, and this guy came up and he said, I think you're going to be the next minister at Unity. And I said, my friend, I'm not sure what medication you're on, but I believe you have me confused with someone else. And so this started going, and I started getting gigs in corporations and stuff like that. And I really wanted to be a motivational speaker eventually. And I didn't want this ministry thing. That seemed, I had to be like a holy man, and I was a bit of more of a wise guy. This wasn't going to work. You know? I like sleeping in on Sundays. This is not going to work. So there was just a lot of this. I just thought, this is crazy. But the funny thing is, I'm struggling in this way that I want, but doors are opening in the ways I don't want. And at some point, I had to surrender and say, God, if this is what it's supposed to be, you know, help me to move through it. Help me to be more conscious. And so I'll tell you, the moment I surrendered, things were so easy in that direction. You know, I was able to say no to the other direction. And what was interesting, because, you know, sometimes for years I felt I was lost. I didn't know what I was doing. But when you surrender, you know what happens? You see those dots that seemed random, they were actually preparing me for where I needed to be. I was on boards and sat on committees, and all those things, I did prison work, all those things trained me where I thought I had nothing else to do. I was doing it because I didn't have nothing else to do. Actually ended up serving me to bring me where I am. My life is way different than I thought it'd be. But it was surrendering to it that brought me and something that I can't even imagine more joy in doing what I get to do. So my question for you is, oh, you're sweet. And so the ultimate no is to say no to our ego, no to our need to control, no to my life has to be this way or people have to be that way. That when we open a space, there is something amazing that God can work miracles through us. Just because it doesn't look the form that we think it was supposed to look or wanted to look, doesn't mean it can't lift us to even a greater level of happiness and fulfillment. So my question, where in your life are you being a bit reluctant? Where in your life are you not being willing? Where in your life are you resisting what your soul is calling you to do? And sometimes we think it always has to do with our job and our career, but it doesn't. Maybe your soul is calling you to go to someone and ask for their forgiveness from something that you've buried that you know you need to clean up. Maybe it's to go get some help for an addiction or an area in your life that you're struggling, that you've been in denial about. Maybe it's to open and risk your heart to love again, even though you got your heart broken. Maybe it's to share and be more honest with your loved ones when you know you've been holding back and not sharing the fullness of your truth. There is a sacred no and a sacred yes within all of us, and the question is, are we willing to listen to it? That idea, let go and let God, sounds simple, but it is powerful. To let go at the deepest level, to open your life, trusting that Spirit has a plan and purpose for you, and giving way to Spirit to allow you to be guided to something greater. The word no sounds kind of negative, sounds kind of cold, but I tell you, it is one of the most powerful and beautiful things you can do for yourself, because it eliminates areas where we waste our time and energy. It clarifies the truth of who we are, and when we're able to say it, the universe will conspire to bring forth even greater things to ourselves. We aren't weaklings. We have the power to take charge of our life. God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but a spirit of love, power, and self-discipline. The question is, are you willing to use that power to learn how to let go and just say no? God bless you all.